Welcome back, everyone, to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. I am your host, Mark Bivins. I know it's been a little while since we've had another episode. We've had our own user conference, plus like the summertime is the conference season for us as well, as long with everybody else. So appreciate you guys being okay with a little different rollout schedule. Today, we had Nicolette Mathey on, who's the CEO and owner of Atrium 24, also a former pharmacy owner. And she talked about a lot of cool stuff that they're building with Atrium 24, like their software platform that they're building, but also just cool opinions on like what matters in the pharmacies from a profitability perspective, what to focus on, sales efforts, a little bit of marketing perspective as well, how to position things with doctors as well. So really, really cool, good in-depth review on some of her perspective on all of those things, and a little bit of a topical conversation around like some of the closures we're seeing in pharmacy as well in the big chain space. So great podcast. We'll take you there now. Thanks. Today we're sitting down with Nicolette Mathey, CEO, owner of Atrium 24, which works with a lot of pharmacies doing marketing, but also sales dashboards, you name it. And I want to explore a little bit of what everything you do with that. I think it's called is it the Dottie platform? Yep. Okay.
That's right.
But hello, good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, yes. Good. Thank you for being on. Fresh out of the user conference, which you talked to, that you also spoke at. Thank you for that. And then straight off the heels of McKesson. I don't know if this will air before the other conferences, but probably somewhere in between from there. But the one thing I wanted to get into with you is, as much as you're such an expert, in my opinion, on pharmacy branding, marketing, doctor detailing, you name it, is just get it. This is my agenda here. I wanted to like pick your brain on all of those things for our users and the audience that watch this. What are you looking at right now with kind of, I'll just say this, like, I think this is one of the like most important parts of kind of what's going on this year with reimbursement pressures being what they are. Where are you having pharmacies focus? And then you can get into a little overarching, like what is Atrium 24 after that. But where are you having pharmacies like focus or lean into at the moment to just find ways to alleviate the margin pressure?
It's interesting because every pharmacy is different. And so as we review the data for pharmacies, it's apparent that you can tell just from looking at a data set kind of exactly what goes on behind that bench. And it's very different. So pharmacies that are looking for cash flow, and if they have the opportunity, of course, they're getting into the GLPs and the weight loss compounds. That's the biggest opportunity. And it is very complicated. Well, we pharmacists tend to make it very complicated.
Okay. Say more.
As we should, because it's a very heavily regulated industry.
Right. Yeah.
And this whole, the compounded GLPs and being able to order them from a 503B, like an FDA registered outsourcing facility manufacturer type, that's different. That's totally different than any of us have ever really experienced before. It's not your traditional chain of command for pedigreed drugs. So of course that leans into a lot of different questions for us. We actually have another legal webinar later today about that very topic.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I know that's been something, that's one of the apprehensions I hear about in that space of like, I want to do it and I know people doing it. I'm just not sure I know about the T's and C's, I guess, from that perspective of like how to do it right.
Right. Yeah. But and I mean, I'm a pretty conservative pharmacist. And then we have a clinical pharmacist on our team, Annie, and she used to work in my store and I brought her over to Atrium with us when I sold it, which I'm sure we'll talk about too.
Yeah.
But Annie's way more conservative than me and like very by the book and very like well read and well studied on every topic. And we're both very comfortable with the opportunity. So legally, it's a great opportunity. It's a great, it's a great demand that patients have. It's more affordable for them. It checks all the boxes. But there are some pharmacies out there that for whatever reason, they don't want to get involved, or maybe they just don't have that demographic where the patients can spend, a few $100s a month on a cash price product.
Yep.
So what we're seeing in those instances, I mean, there's a big opportunity now with the long-term care at home and being able to bill for the services that you're already providing to those patients. Mm-hmm. So that's really something to dig into as well.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. So, you said you spent time looking at data. That was like one of the first things you said when you're saying you can usually tell just by looking at the data. Explain to me how you and the Atrium 24 crew kind of look at data and use it to drive what you're doing.
Yeah, it's interesting because most of the data is not that great. It's like reimbursement information for blood pressure pills, or just like prescriptions that pharmacies are losing money on. Yeah. And I don't mean the big losers. Those you definitely have to look at and analyze and kind of mitigate those losses in your business right away. Yeah. But most of the data that we receive from the couple hundred pharmacies around the country that we pull in every day is just like, the profit margin might be $1, $3, but we all know the national average to dispense a prescription is about $12.
It's like $12, right? Yeah.
So once you factor in that overhead, those prescriptions still lose money. Right. So it's almost like the 80-20 rule. You have to be able to, from a business perspective, just look at your data set and say, what type of pharmacy is this and where's the opportunity? So where is most of the profits coming from, or where is most of that opportunity? That's what kind of pharmacy that is. That's what kind of pharmacy they should buckle in to be. And it might not even be prescription revenues. It might be over the counter, it might be clinical, it might be something totally different.
Okay. All right. So follow your margin. Your margin makes your model. If you're not leaned into that model, lean in, right? Is what it sounds like. Okay. Yep. Okay. Explain a little bit about I know I kind of went backwards with this a little bit, but explain a little bit about Atrium 24. I know you guys have the platform that you have, a lot of tools into it, and how pharmacies use it.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating to me, and we're close. We're pretty close. We're not there yet, but in the summer of 2015, mm-hmm. I was working for Dan Benamos at PDS, at Pharmacy Development Services. And we started, I just started having some of our pharmacies because I had the opportunity to visit over 100 pharmacies now to date, and just really to see how the teams interacted, or how they kind of built out their different niche programs. But I started having these pharmacies just email into us their raw data files, like their CSVs, in 2015. Yeah. And I was like, man, and my kids, this will be like how we tell our kids, before cell phones, we had this. I'll be like, before AI, we had these pharmacies send me their CSV files. I'm like, what?
We had, my kids don't even know what a CSV is at the moment. I don't think, and I've got a college kid. So.
Yeah, probably mine either. Unless it's in Roblox or something, I don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah. But we were pulling this data in, and we were like, there has to be a way to tee it up or to identify to the pharmacy. And still to this day, we're not there yet. But, and if you guys know my history, and I always kind of joke, I used to work for PDS, don't hold it against me.
Right. And then you owned a pharmacy, and you've had a whole journey you've gone on the last, I'd say, just 5 years. And I'll say this, I think you took everybody along who wanted to follow with it, which was cool. I thought that was really cool on LinkedIn or other social networks. You kind of took everybody along who wanted to go.
It's, what's hard to do that we all struggle with, and that we all have to decide every day. You have to learn what to say no to. Mm-hmm. So you have to identify what your true passion is and what your true focus is. And sometimes you have to say no to things. And so that's what I found with my pharmacy. I was working at PDS as the director of clinical services. I helped build the early analytics tool. It still didn't capture what I wanted to build and what we're pretty close to having built right now.
Okay, cool.
But then while I worked there, I bought my pharmacy because I was like, well, I don't really like being on the shelf and seeing all these other pharmacies. I want to test out these programs that I'm working on and thinking up in my own store. So we did that, and that was a lot of fun. But when we really started building this Dottie, so Dottie connects the dots for your pharmacy's sales and marketing initiatives. Right. That's how she got her name.
Got it. Okay.
But when we really started digging in and building it, and I'm not going linearly, when I left PDS, when they had sold to private equity, I was like, I'm just going to work in my own pharmacy. I like it here. I like taking care of my neighbors and my patients, and I'm just going to stay here. But when I did that, a lot of pharmacies were still coming to me and approaching me because, like you said, I'm all over social media.
Yeah.
all
No,
the
no.
time.
Everyone knows you. Like, yeah, you're kind of the person who doesn't, you're one of the few that don't really need an introduction most of the time. So,
Yeah, because I just won't leave anybody alone. I'm like, hey, I got an idea. Hey, we're thinking about this, or what are you people doing about this thing? But I was in my store and they were like, no, let's keep focusing on, PDS was kind of a generalist.
Sure.
They did the business coaching and they did the leadership, and that's very important. And that's not what I wanted to do and focus on. So I started Atrium 24 in 2019, and it's a specialist. It's focused on sales and marketing, business development, like just just honing your pharmacy and growing it intentionally. That's what it does. So we did that manually with consulting. It was almost like Fight Club in the beginning. We didn't really talk about it. It was like, we have this. It was a pretty high price point, and it was kind of invite only one-on-one consulting for like business development and strategy. So we did that for a number of years. And then 2.5 years ago, I was like, okay, we need to invest all my time and all my money in building this piece of software that pharmacies need, because I strongly feel and believe we shouldn't be running a bunch of reports and trying to figure out where our business should go or what type of business we have or what our opportunity is. The data should show us that.
Yeah. Okay. I love that phrase of like being, I guess you're not assuming, but like letting the data tell you what type of business you have. I love the way you say that. That's such a good, like, objective viewpoint, I think, about truly like where you stand inside the four walls of your pharmacy.
Yeah. And data is objective. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
I don't like things that are subjective.
Sure. That makes total sense.
So, yeah. So, and then if you don't like what the data tells you, then okay, then what's the strategy to change it? Mm-hmm. But what does the data tell you? And so especially now with how quickly AI is coming along, I mean, we're definitely building our data sets so that we can get them large enough to implement machine learning, which is a form of artificial intelligence.
Sure.
Because my goal is, and this type of technology does exist in other sectors, like in the construction industry, where there's technology and there's a dashboard that tells you what's around the corner, or what is trending differently in your data, or what do you need to be aware of, and then what do you need to do today about it?
Yeah, so almost signal processing in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, decision support, Copilot.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, all right.
Yep.
Tell us more then. I guess let's dive into some of the pillars of what you're doing with some of these pharmacies. I know there's I'll just say brand management, sales, marketing. Which one of those you want to dive in first? I've just a bunch of questions around all of those from a sales perspective, marketing perspective, brand perspective. What data matters to you?
I think it's important. Pharmacies usually do a pretty good job at branding and at social media somewhat. And there's a lot of companies out there that will provide content. You shouldn't end with that content. You should just use it to augment your organic content that you're putting into your social media channels.
Sure.
But where pharmacies really don't focus that much on, in my experience, is what is feeding your beast? Like, do you have a sales department? Do you have a sales arm? Do you have a sales rep? If you don't have a sales rep, and that's fine, most pharmacies don't have a sales rep, but if you don't, who is performing that function? Who is leading the pharmacy or providing that outreach? We have a client in Arizona that does really well. And he actually calls doctors' offices, faxes them information, logs everything in our .e CRM to keep all his health straight. But I mean, he would be successful without us. I'm just shameless plug. But it just goes to show that you don't have to be like, oh, I have all this sales team, a fleet of reps out, boots on the ground. You don't need that. Some companies have it, but you could be a pharmacy owner who is just focused on, I'm going to outreach to 5 providers per week. Those are going to be your lead measures, because your lag measures are, I want to grow my GLP prescription count or my gross profit by 20% in the next month or 2 months. Well, how are you going to get there?
That makes total sense. So that I do think that when some folks hear sales efforts or investing in sales, I'll just say activities, a lot of the time it's kind of can be misconstrued as like it's a person I have to hire and put on the payroll, which is not exactly what you're talking about. It's more of a, hey, who's focused on this segment? It sounds like, and like you may have a great pharmacist that just owns the LTC at home relationships or the LTC relationships in general. And then you have another person who handles this particular doctor set because they drive some of your compounding. So, but again, it goes back to look at the data and know your business. And that's where you focus.
Yep. And you know what I think is fascinating too? I always love seeing what other companies or other people in our industry are doing to help move the needle. So there's a lot of companies, for example, if we talk about long-term care at home, there's companies out there that go and help the pharmacies maybe get those contracts or help them. They install their equipment and they go and help them do some doctor detailing or sales, marketing, whatever it is. But then they leave. There's also companies that will go help set up the pharmacy with ordering these GLP weight loss compounds from a pharmacy and marketing materials, but then they leave. So to me, that's always a gap because I call it like lovingly, it's the retail dumpster fire. So
in a good way, in an affectionate way.
I love it, but it's true. I mean, it's a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
You might go into work one day every day with the best intentions, but then you have, team members call out a ton of like, maybe the switch goes down. Yeah. Hopefully not. Maybe you have internet
all real things
issues
that have happened in this past, like just 6 months.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You can't get a hold of the doctor's offices for the clarifications or the refills. Like you just get slammed, whatever it is. But with that, how can you justify, like, what did you do with your day? So you might have gone in and you said, okay, I just bought this big piece of equipment, or I just hired this expensive consultant to come in and set up this program, or I just bought this program online, or I went to a trade show and I bought this great thing back. And we have to do all these things. We have to outreach to 5 prescribers a week. We have to, you're not going to do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a lot of where I focused our technology build is on a system to keep you on track with your initiatives. So it's a sales system. It's a sales dashboard. It pulls in your trends of your top prescribers and your things. It has a place to put notes. It has all your marketing materials. It automatically brands them. But it also has an LMS, which is a learning management system, where we house all of our webinars. Oh. Because, and then so I'm a pharmacist and a former pharmacy owner and a data nerd. And then Annie's clinical, Jen, if you've all met Jen, curly blonde-haired lady bopping around the trade shows with me.
Yes.
Yeah. She's our Eli Lilly trained pharma rep.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so she actually was, she came to my pharmacy to be the rep like 4 or 5 years ago. And that's when I realized I didn't know anything about managing a sales rep or about building a sales system. So together we kind of built the software because I wanted to know, okay, how does pharma approach a territory? How does pharma go into the doctor's office and what do they say? How do they get traction? How do they track it? What are their KPIs? So we built all those things into the Dottie software for independent pharmacies. But if you think about it, it could be as complicated as you want. It could manage a whole fleet of 20 reps in multi-state territories, or it could just be as simple as we bought this machine, we visited these long-term care facilities, we made initial contacts, but we need a system to track
and follow up. Yep.
How's that business doing? When was the last time we went there? What were the notes? And the whole team to have access to that.
Yeah. And help drive and monitor your like nurturing efforts with it and things like that. That makes total sense. I do think I've just over the years of being at Pioneer in general, before and then now at RedSail as well, there's still like the need and the want. It seems like from I'll say pharmacy. It started in specialty and then it's kind of like grown to all of these other different business lines in general as pharmacies had to just like shift and evolve and just get into new things around like, man, a centrally housed like CRM for the initiatives that matter.
Yeah.
And so that makes total sense. I could totally see the need for that because we've had so many people just like, can you just build one? I'm like, well, we're building a whole pharmacy management system. So
right. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And then too, the LMS is important because we've experienced this too, and I'm sure you have. It's one thing for the owner to understand all the things, get all their questions answered, and develop the system, which the owner's always very busy. So that's a lot. But then you have to get the whole team educated, trained, on board, using the same system, and then having it visible to everybody so everybody can track the progress of the initiative.
Yep. That makes makes total sense. You're housing an LMS. That's a very unique, I would just say, but a really unique CRM approach and a very pharmacy specific approach that does not exist anywhere. I don't think.
Yeah. And it brings in all remember we said in the beginning too, how you have to learn to say no to certain things and focus on your passions and what you're good at. I love learning about new things in kind of like clinical research and development, R&D. So I love talking with innovative, passionate pharmacy owners about what's next or what's happening or where are you experiencing success or where are your patients coming to you and asking you to solve these problems for them? Like, what are the issues? And then what is going to be the next opportunity for us? Because we can pivot so quickly in our independent pharmacies.
Yes.
And so with that, let me build it into an entire program in our learning management system with webinars and resources. Let's automatically pull your data in and show you what's happening with that initiative. Let's train your team. Let's get everybody in there. So it kind of takes what I used to do for PDS back in the day was find and build and present the next program at each conference that we did.
Yep.
But now we just kind of built a system to do that year round.
Right. So Dottie is Nicolette, just an AI powered.
Yeah.
Nicolette,
so it's
right?
supposed to be much better than my ADD brain running around, but it has elements of it.
Yes.
But as you know, with software, you don't want to have a SPOF in software, right? A single point of failure.
Right. Yep.
And so that's me. That's what a lot of my developers have told me, that I'm the SPOF. So
you're the single point of failure. Got it. All right.
Yeah. I've been called worse, believe it or not. But but software is supposed to run itself. It's not supposed to be people dependent.
Right.
And I think that's what so many pharmacy owners struggle with, is maybe they're the SPOF.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah. Usually everything's in their head, right? Half the time.
Yep. So how can you build it into a system? And anything where a person has to do something, if a person has to click a button, if a person has to run a report, it's your just utilization is going to go down by 80%. So the more things that you can automate and make them happen without any human intervention, the better. Because if you think about it, the human intervention is supposed to be the pharmacy team talking with patients.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, no, that's
not running reports.
100%. That's the reason, kind of the way, when they built the care planning in Pioneer, Josh built the approach of what if they just did MedSync the Pioneer way? If you just do MedSync the Pioneer way, the care plans just get submitted automatically, and you just submitted all of your care plans for your CPSN effort or whatever effort it was, maybe a payer effort or something like that, and it just happened. You didn't have to go manually do that, and that's totally similar philosophies. Where you can automate, you absolutely should.
That's exactly right.
I agree with you on that. So let's dive it. So you said, what's around the corner? You're talking about, hey, look, I try to be data dependent to identify and be early on what's around the corner. What do you thinking is around the corner in these next 3 to 6 months? And then if you want to go longer, great.
I definitely think the long-term care at home opportunity will get bigger. More payers will come on board. Yeah. Hopefully the reimbursement opportunities will expand. I know CPESN, especially in certain states, is really making a ton of headway in the billable opportunities. So that's something to stay on top of and aware of as well.
They're not building more homes either. They're not building more facilities in droves.
Right.
There's already studies on that the supply side is not going to meet demand, so they're going to have to pivot, I think, and support it.
Right. So there's that opportunity. With the GLPs, with the weight loss, the opportunity is just so incredible because people are thinking like, well, do I want to get involved because the semaglutide and the tirzepatide are on the FDA shortage list?
Yeah.
Well, what happens when they come off? Number one, I think it's actually going to be a pretty long time before they come off.
Yeah, they just commissioned building some of these, like, I'm going to call it manufacturing facilities. It's probably a bad term for it, but that takes time. That just takes so much time.
It takes a lot of time and a lot of regulation. So they're trying to like keep up with the demand and building all like the pen units and all the things. But the manufacturing plants in China that are manufacturing the actual API, the active pharmaceutical ingredient of like the powdered semaglutide, the powdered tirzepatide, that's available.
Right. Yes.
And there are reputable distributors, or sometimes you can buy direct, depending, where pharmacies can buy that, and or these 503Bs can buy it, compound a commercial copy since it's on the shortage list, and then sell that vial, that commercial copy, to pharmacies.
Yep.
And pharmacies can dispense to a patient. Now, shortage list, what we're seeing, it looks like it's going to be at the earliest, like 2026, before they even come off the shortage list.
Ooh, yeah.
So plenty of time, especially when the profit margin is so healthy on these prescriptions. And this is a brand new pipeline, like this whole GLP and just mechanism of action is going to revolutionize healthcare. And it's not just for weight loss. They're researching it in addictions. They're researching it in autoimmune disease.
Yeah, they just came out with it. Really helped. What is it where you have sleep? I just said it. Sleep apnea, I think, or something like that. Where I think Mounjaro was like almost cured it, or something like that. I read a headline. I didn't read the article, so forgive me for not.
So no, it's funny because I have some health nut friends who are like, oh, these drugs are terrible. People need to go to the gym. And I'm like, I mean, there's so much more to it than that.
Yeah, there's more to it than that.
There's more to it. And especially, so this whole new pathway. So now there's new drugs in the pipeline that are in different phases of trials of FDA approval. So even if the very first one, the semaglutide, comes off the shortage list, which I still think will be a while, there will be new drugs that if the demand can't keep up, that they'll be on the shortage list. So I don't see any valid argument for why pharmacies shouldn't get involved.
Got it.
In the GLPs.
Got it. I think in the health system space, they're much more comfortable because I remember when I used to have to trape the halls of like the health systems in the hospitals all the time, the pharmacies there, all bought from 503Bs. Like they just, because there was just so many like shortages just on like just normal stuff that you would think that you wouldn't be able to like get sodium chloride, but they had to go figure it out. How to like, they literally built, some of these health systems built their own manufacturing facilities just to get it. So they're just so much more. I think if you get out of the retail world a little bit and think a little broader, there's other folks already doing this at pretty large scale. And have these relationships that they trust. So I'm with you there. That's interesting. Okay.
You know what, too? That's a good point about just other products for 503B, because this is a very reputable channel. It's just usually 503Bs would sell to hospitals, they would sell to clinics, shortage products. Now we just have a reason on these GLPs for pharmacies to buy from them. Because we didn't need the injectable lidocaines the things that were on shortage lists before. Yep.
This is the first kind of step into the retail world needing to access the channel and just people getting comfortable with it.
But now if you think about it, it's like, instead of me opening a sterile arm to my pharmacy, now I can just bolt on this 503B business and not have all that overhead. So what's another hot sterile product that patients are usually looking for is Trimix. For erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
And so we're working on building out a Trimix program, and there's about 75 or so registered 503Bs in the country. And so we've been reaching out to everyone to say, like, what's your catalog? Do you sell to pharmacies? Do you have these products? Do you have plans to make these products? If we could grow the demand, would you make these products?
Got it.
So it's just fascinating. So we actually have another call with a 503B later today. I'm actually going to go do 2 site visits soon. One kind of in the Northeast and one way out west, because I like to see it with my own eyes and just.
I would think you would,
Yeah. Just because as a pharmacist, I have 700 questions.
Yeah, you do. And honestly, even if they answered them all on the phone, I'm not sure you'd feel, you know what I mean? Like you just do. I almost know everybody who's like doing this at some real scale is all vetted in some way for the most part.
Yep.
I think.
And you get a feel for when you meet people in person too. Mm-hmm. You can get a feel for how do they feel about compliance? Mm-hmm. How do they feel about like being organized or ready for regulatory boards? How does their team interact with them? What is the atmosphere in this? Because if it is going to be something that our pharmacies are going to bring in, when you start looking at healthcare and trying to find ways for pharmacies to make money, mm-hmm. it can get sideways and gray and slimy. And so anytime you're feeling that kind of way, it's time to just back off and let it play out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Involved. And Scott, like I think we had Scott Brunner on at the beginning, like towards the early part of the year, and just kind of talking through like how often these 503Bs are actually inspected and all of that with the FDA relative to the actual, like, as a comparison to the facilities that the manufacturers actually have,
right?
Which was jarring to me. I didn't know that. Like, I mean, they're getting visited up to or more than like twice a year, I think. Hopefully I'm not misspeaking. I just can't recall everything from that podcast. But then some of these facilities and whatever country they're in probably hasn't had a visitor in 2 years. So it's just kind of a different approach. And so when you know that, once you understand all the regulation it takes to be a 503B, you can't just like there's not really room for, there's so many financial hurdles you can't be a fly-by-night 503B.
Right, that's right.
Like, it's just not a thing.
But it's interesting. I mean, there are some fly-by-night manufacturing facilities out in India and in China that are just like boarded up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know.
Actually, some of the suppliers that we recommend, they actually go visit the facilities in China and in India because the FDA can't get there as frequently, or, like even if someone newly registers, they have to wait for their FDA inspection. So sometimes, even if it's not the FDA, you'll know someone and they'll have at least some proof or documentation or something that they actually did their due diligence and visited facilities as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to shift for a second because this is always like you're one of the few people that talk about this, and I wanted to get just kind of your takes or if you had any fresh thoughts on it, just like the way you approach physicians in general. Some people call it doctor detailing, some people call it whatever. You can call it marketing, call it biz dev. There's about 80 different names for it and on all of that. But I do feel like you've always like had a focus and like a voice of like, you have to be in front of your providers in some way so that you can talk about differentiation. I just wanted to get, I guess, a fresh perspective on that from you. Yeah.
And it's interesting too. There's so much information out there. It's easy to be overwhelmed. And so I know even one of our clients, he went in Dottie and he downloaded all the auto-branded resources for this specialty, got it in his folder. He went to the office and he just kind of like firehosed the front desk with everything.
We've all been an early, I don't know if you've been an early sales guy, but we've all done that. We've all done that.
And so he was telling us, it doesn't work. It doesn't this. And we're like, what did you do? So I probably used to do the same thing. Like, I'm coming in. This is a time that's good for me. I have something to say.
Right. I'm in the mental space to tell you about this. I don't know if you are or not, but I am. And I'm going to shoot this off. Yep.
So, but I learned from Jen that a lot of it is, and you're going to have to go in there multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is even calling their office at first, letting them know who you are, when is a good time to stop by, you have some information. Now, if you're going to go there and tell them about the GLPs and that you have the compounded GLPs at a much lower price than the patient would have to pay out of pocket for the brand name that's hard to get, I mean, they're pretty much going to usher you in.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a real problem they're all trying to solve right now. So it's a little different conversation.
It's nice to have a message that they want to hear from you. But if you think about this, if you capitalize on this opportunity, where you're going to have their attention. You call and you just ask, like, when's a good time? Because, oh, doctor's in the other office these days a week. Doctor's in surgery this day. We don't see reps on this day, whatever. So go at a time that's convenient for them.
Yep.
And then when you do go in, a lot of times what Jen does when she walks in and what she teaches our clients is, when you go in, look around. How busy are they? And what are they selling? Are they selling diabetic shoes in the lobby? Are they selling CBD? Are they selling a bunch of stuff? Then don't come in and talk about how you sell that stuff too.
Yeah, right. 100%.
So read the room a bit when you first come in.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's a good time. Or if you're just driving by maybe and you didn't call, just pop in and be like, introduce yourself. Is now a good time? Can I have a minute with the doc? No. Can I talk with the office manager? Can I talk with their nurse? But if there's patients, hang back. Don't get in line in front of the patients. So all these things that pharmacy people don't know. Yeah. It's not common knowledge. So, but when you do go, have some material to leave behind. Some of them will say yeah, you can talk to the doctors in the practice, but you have to schedule a lunch. Okay. So, yeah. You could tell them well, we don't typically do lunches. We're pretty low budget. We're just out here, growing our relationships, seeing how we can help you, whatever it is. But sometimes you do have to do lunch, but just make sure all the doctors are going to be there. Right. And when you go in, leave the material in advance. This is what we're going to talk about. Have a sign-in sheet. Learn everybody who comes in the room, who they are, what their name is, what they do in the office, because you never know who makes the decisions on where those prescriptions are going to be sent. Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And I always tell people too, with that, leverage your localness. Right? There's an element of hey, I'm the pharmacy, just 2 blocks away, or maybe it's not 2 blocks away, but across town or whatever it is. And we do this. I'm here in the community too. I'm not a sometimes they'll just kind of associate at times if you don't do it right, just a nameless face sales guy. Right. or lady, and just make sure you leverage your localness about who you are, because for those docs that matters to, that resonates. I think. That's a cool. Yeah, and even give them your cell phone number. If you can't find a medication, if you are having trouble with, just text us, and we'll figure it out for you. Yeah. How have you seen those leveraged? I guess, and without being slimy or gross about it, is that hey? Obviously, it's a pure, I wouldn't even just say GLP play. I totally get that conversation. That makes total sense because that's an active problem they're all trying to solve. But I would even just say compounding in general, too, is probably an area where it's hey, look, if you have some formulation needs because a patient can't do X, Y, Z, I mean, right. I'm your person. I'm your team for that. Where else have you seen that leverage? I even seen it I think it was Bob or somebody was talking about it, where they're some of these pharmacies have an initiative to get their staff trained as I'm going to butcher this wrong, but some type of social worker, clinical. Oh community health workers. I think. There you go. Community healthcare worker and things like that. And it's just a different way to talk about your staff and your pharmacy than just I'm a pharmacy. So where have you seen some of those relationships actually bear fruit? I guess is what I'm trying to get for the audience here. Yeah, well, I mean, I think Amina is the queen. Oh, gosh, Amina Abubakar of working with local providers in unique ways that aren't centered around just pharmacy and dispensing. Right. But I know that it was a huge uphill battle. When we first built out the programs with Amina and her pharmacist Olivia. Built out the programs on annual wellness visits and chronic care management. That's a really hard sell to get those offices, because they're oh no, my patients only want to see me, or this is against the norm. So any way that you can just kind of get in there a little bit is helpful too. But I mean, she's definitely the queen in setting all that up. Yeah, she's like the Beyonce of provider relationships. She is, for sure. She definitely is. I don't know. Yeah. It makes sense. And it's a thing that builds too. I look at that as the second you're useful once,
they'll remember that. And it may be 6 months before
Yep.
you even have another opportunity to be useful again, but like,
Yep.
it'll associate good things for you in the pharmacy that you have. So I agree. I was always just kind of like, I like to get your take on that piece of it. And then so the other thing I was going to rotate into from there a little bit was some of the like just like sales functions and tracking that you guys think that matters is, and what I mean by that is like data dependent stuff. And I'm sure every pharmacy is different. I know that's for sure, but like you go back, you kind of touched on it with the 80-20 rule, look at your data and go focus on the things that are actually making you money. But from a sales perspective, how are you seeing that, I guess, operationalized a little bit inside the four walls?
I think that the most direct way to approach it and what we do in our software is, how is everything trending? So you should know, how many prescriptions do we fill per month, per week? What's our top line revenue per month, per week? What's our cost of goods? What's our gross profit? Just on like not your QuickBooks, not your DIR rebate, just on like a gross profit perspective.
Just like
how do we trend?
Standard gross profit, not all the back end dollars perspective. Okay.
Yep. So don't overcomplicate it. Just be able to rattle it off and be able to know. And then who are your top, let's say 10 prescribers by gross profit and by script count? Who are they? And if they change, how quickly are you alerted?
Oh,
like when do you realize when they change?
When do you process the signal, I guess? Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes total sense.
And if they do change, why? Why did they change? Did you anticipate that change? Do you like that change? Or does that mean that a significant part of the profitability of your business is slipping?
I see. Okay.
And then what should you do about it? And so then that leads into, well, on my top 10 providers, have I gone and personally visited them and thanked them for their business? Because they're important. They're important to your bottom line.
Can you find their relationships too that associate with your pharmacy as well? That's another way to do that. Identify those.
Yeah. And I mean, we all go to these trade shows and we learn about these new, cool, exciting things, whether we're in a CE program or we're on the trade show floor.
Right.
And then we bring it back to our pharmacy and we say, okay, we're going to do this new great thing. Okay, but what if you just looked at your data first, went and visited your top 10 prescribers and asked them, what do they want?
Yeah.
Because they're already used to sending business into your store. They already trust you. They already, they know the drill. They know your system. The whole team over there knows how to send in business. So like, hey, you send us, like, you're our top compounding doc.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that, but we really appreciate you. And like, when we see a prescription come over from your office, VIP all the way.
And what am I doing right, man? Like, is there anything I'm doing right too? Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong, but tell me what I'm doing right too. I want to do more of those things for you as well.
Right. And then are you sending any compounds anywhere else? Because when I started asking that question, I would find, we have this compound that this one rep came and brought us, and we send it out to Utah, or we send it up to Massachusetts for dry sockets for dental. I was like, we can make that. Yeah. It's like, we actually make that all the time. It's like, I didn't even know you wrote for that. They're like, well, you didn't ask.
Yeah. And some of that, you have to earn the right. I always tell people you have to earn the right to ask those questions. And that's usually being useful in some way. And you earn the right to do that. So that's
but
cool.
So many times it's like water your own grass. We have pharmacy owners, they start with us and they're like, okay, I want to grow into dermatology and I want to grow into men's health. And we're like, yeah, but your data says that you do really well in vet.
Yeah.
And HRT. Yep. So have you maximized that?
Yeah.
Like, have you fully, like, water your own grass first? Yes, of course, grow. Yeah. Set like a 90-day milestone and a timeline and like, let's do that. But let's maximize what you're doing now and don't let that business slip through the cracks. Because if you're growing something over here, but your profits over here are slowly eroding because you're not focused on them, you're never going to get ahead.
Yep. That's a good point. Good. That's kind of what I wanted to get at. That we're almost running. So this is kind of something that I thought was timely. This is not necessarily Atrium 24-ish related, but you did have an opinion just now earlier that was like, hey, know how to say no to the things that you should say no to, or be careful with what you say yes to a little bit too, is another way of stating it. With some of these pharmacy closures that we're seeing from some of the larger chains, and things like that. And then Walgreens just off a fresh announcement. I don't know if that would call that an announcement. I guess that was an interview he did where it was said something like potentially, I'm not quoting anything, but around 20 to 25% of their stores just aren't profitable, that they might shut. So, so in that, everybody has the drive. I don't think you get into this job in this business line because you are just completely all about just making money. It's usually about helping patients first, and I figure out how to make a living that way. What's your filter or thinking through pharmacies with, there's going to be, it sounds like another round of a little bit of patients trying to find out where to go for help. So where do you see your filter of know what to say no to with some of those patients coming on? Because I do think there's an element of some of those patients could drown you a little bit if they're the wrong patient type.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I've invested all my everything into a software company to help pharmacies as a decision support tool. Right. And now you have 19,000 pharmacies and change in the country, and a significant portion of them might close. So you would think, oh no, the market is getting smaller, or the market is dying, or the market is struggling too much. Think about it. There's different ways to look at it. There's not going to be less prescriptions. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We're actually seeing prescription counts go up in all of our pharmacies for the most part.
Yeah. So there's going to be less pharmacies, but maybe some of we could use some attrition in the industry.
I would say especially in the large chain space, super oversaturated places.
Because I'm here in Florida, and it used to be volume. If you filled 100, 200 prescriptions a day, you had it made in the shade. You were good to go. So there's a Publix, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, literally multiple of them on every corner here in Florida where I am. So we could use some attrition of those big boxes for sure. And these prescriptions that we don't want, that just don't do well in our data set, they're just maintenance medications. They reimburse less than it costs us to fill them. Right. Those can go to mail order. That's fine. Yeah. And mail order can service them. But the prescriptions that need that human element, like the weight loss drugs, or even the long-term care at home, if we can dig into that and do those billable services for the extras, there's definitely enough, even with all these shifts, there's enough for us as independent pharmacies to focus on what makes us profitable in our data sets and double down on those and double down on the local relationships. Because the more technologically advanced that we all get, a lot of us want to go back to that human element somewhat.
There is so much times where I this sounds like such an old grumpy man statement, but I heard so many times where I'm like, I just want someone to pick up the phone or you know what I mean? Can I just talk to somebody or see somebody? Right. Either way, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the world's going to pass me by because of that, but I don't know.
I don't think so, because there's so many people that feel that way. Even yesterday, a friend of mine, she's trying to get an eye drop for her dog. Yeah. And the vet's office is like, it's on back order. He can't get it for 5 months. So, and then she had to call the specialist for the dog. What should I do? And they're like, well, call around all the different pharmacies and see if anybody has it in stock. And then she's telling me all this. I'm sitting there. I was like, I'm sorry, but if it's me, and if I know that a dog needs his eye drop so he doesn't lose it to glaucoma, like he lost the other one, poor thing. Right. I'm going to be like, okay, the big guys are on back order. I don't have it. Let me check around for else who has it. If nobody else has it, it's a shortage product. Let me see if any 503Bs have it. Let me figure this out for this dog so that he can get his eye drop so he doesn't lose his eye. But, if you're just an online, fill out this form, click this thing, get it shipped to your house, nobody's going to follow that to the finish line for you. You're not going to get the care that you need.
100%. If they don't have it, it's just kind of hands up, right? They're like, I don't know. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, I totally get that. So I'm with you. That makes total sense.
Yeah. But it goes full circle, right? Yeah. So this is why, and this is my driver, is let's build something that's needed in technology for pharmacies. Every pharmacy needs this. I used to work at Walgreens, and Walgreens approaches this the same way. They don't have an approach at the store level. They were like, hey, here's a little kit with some mugs and some sticky notes, go doctor detail. And I'm like, what? Yeah. So we need a tool that just organizes all the reports and all the busy work and all the things and just tells us what our business is so that we have time to find the eye drop for that dog or to explain to these GLP weight loss patients, because they started these injections. Now they're seeing weight loss. They've tried their whole lives. They've never really had success. They've struggled. Now they're actually seeing success. So now you have their attention. Now they're like, I feel motivated. Yeah. I'm losing weight. Tell me now how I can get off my metformin. Tell me how I can get off my blood pressure pills.
Yep.
Tell me about adequate protein intake, because I'm seeing that it makes a difference now. So if we free up time to talk to patients and to actually help them become healthier, that's what we're all trying to do.
It's probably what almost everybody got into this for in some way, right?
Yeah.
But you did give us, I think, like with the, I'm gonna loop back just a second. You did give us I do think a lot of good filters to think about if you're in one of those. Like I'm actually right next door to one, at a CVS, a Walgreens, a Kroger, another CVS inside a Target, and all of that stuff. Like just literally on almost the same block, all of it. They did shutter the CVS, the standalone CVS. They actually kept the one in the Target, which I was surprised. But a lot of good filters to think through, and you're bringing in these transfers or whatever. If you're part of one of those, if you're in one of those neighborhoods where that's happening, you gave us a lot of good filters to think about. Like, one, are they connected to providers in some way? And two, and then like, is there an LTC at home possibilities? Great. Is there compounding possibilities with these? Like, ensure, like, make sure, like, if you can, like, those guys feel good coming in, right? From that perspective. So cool. Good.
Yep. And then I definitely think a lot of the staff now, do I think that all these big box pharmacies are practicing at the top of their license and providing great healthcare? No.
In aggregate, no. But 100% in some pharmacies are great. But yeah.
Yeah. But some of the pharmacists in town, they have a following. Yeah. And the technicians, they have a following. And they do care, and they show up for work every day, and they run that extra mile, and they do those things for those patients. So, as these closures are going on too, find those employees and bring them over to your team.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still good people in there. There's still great people in there.
There are.
So makes total sense. Well, I think that wraps up most of it. I think we're running into time. So I don't let anybody leave, and I don't know if anybody prepped you for this, but I don't let anybody leave without asking. The section's called Presribeables, but it's basically what are you reading, watching, or listening to at the moment that you think the audience could care about? And that could be work stuff, or it could be fun stuff, or one of both, either or.
Okay, so I recently read a book when I was really digging into 100% of being like in the CEO role. So learning what to say no to, I actually last year, in just talking with my lawyer and having a conversation with my lawyer, realized that I can't run and be the CEO and scale and grow two companies at the same time. So I ended up selling my pharmacy to a local guy here, and now he has like 13 local stores. So all that worked out, and I'm actually in the same building. My pharmacy's downstairs, and the Atrium office is upstairs in this big building here in Palm Harbor.
Cool.
But I read this book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Okay.
And it was horrible. It was it was wonderfully
it's not a glowing review, but yes.
Yeah. But it made me think about business and my role in the business as the CEO, because the CEO is in charge of the team and the vision and making sure you don't run out of money.
Right.
And how do you keep all these things going? It's a tough job, and that's the job that pharmacy owners have on top of so many other jobs that they have. So that was really something, the hard thing about hard things. And then now I'm reading The Lean Startup and 0 to 1, which is also a startup book.
All right. Man, we got three. We got three today.
Yeah. Oh, right. And I'm reading the Bridgerton series.
Oh, you're reading the series. So my wife's been watching it, but I didn't even, this is how stupid I am. I didn't even know there were books associated with it. Maybe she already has read those. I don't know, but I know my wife watches that for sure.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I don't like to watch anything on TV. I like to read it.
Oh, there you go. I guess mine, I always try to bring one too, and I only have one, so I already feel just in general, most of the time
I only
inadequate.
gave you that much because Jeff gave me such a hard time, Jeff and Marcia, the last time I was on, because I said that I don't really like to read books, and he just really like dug in on that one. So, but I was really into like my romance novel era at that time, and so I didn't want to tell him that because I knew he would just really give me a hard time about that one. So he embarrassed me last time. So okay. I came prepared now.
All right, we came prepared this time. That's what that was. All right, some scars. All right.
Yes.
I've reread just because I like the book. So if anybody's a financial nerd also that reads that watches this, there's probably like 3 of us that overlap, maybe. But there's a great book if you like the movie. I don't know if you've watched The Big Short or anything like that, but it's about the financial crisis and stuff. There's a book called Liar's Poker, which is like the first book that guy ever wrote. And it's just kind of like about the 80s and the bond market and stuff. And it's such a great book. So anyway, that's another one that it'll if for those who you don't either like financial markets or just like to learn about stuff, it's a cool book to like learn and like have someone's journey through the bond market, but back in the 80s.
Is it dry though?
No, it's super fun. Like it's actually really like well written and written more as a story, not as just a financial markets book.
Kind of like a Moneyball situation or something.
100%. Like if you've watched The Big Short, the same guy who wrote The Big Short is the guy who wrote Liar's Poker. It was just his first book he really ever published. So
that's cool.
It's a good book. So
yeah.
Well, Nicolette, thank you for being on. Thank you for what you're doing for Pharmacies. We'll keep following. We'll put some links in the show notes about Atrium and then also your plethora of books you gave us. We always try to put those in the show notes for people to like have a resource to look to be like, oh, Nicolette was talking about that book. Where was it? And it'll be in the show notes at the bottom. So
thanks.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, thank you for being on, and we'll see everybody next time.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Nicolette. All right. See you.